Good morning and welcome to the latest episode in the sector's longest running podcast series, Developing the Trust, with me, Tim Warnford. My guest today is none other than Benedicte Yue Vincent. I'm hoping I managed to pronounce that without sounding like Peter Sellers and Inspector Clouseau. Forgive me if for any poor French pronunciation. You are Chief Financial Officer at the River Learning Trust, a 28-school multi-academy trust. Benedicte was awarded CFO of the Year at the 2023 MAT Excellent Awards for her contribution to system leadership and innovation. She also received the ISBL CEO Award for exceptional contribution to school business leadership and became a trustee of this professional body earlier this year. If you read Schools Week or TES, you are very likely to have seen her invaluable commentary in both of these sector publications too. Welcome to sunny Brighton on an early autumnal morning. How are you, Benedicte?
Well, good morning, Tim, and good morning, Brighton. Bonjour. I'm very well. Thank you for the opportunity to come here, Tim. I'm very delighted to take part in this podcast.
Oh, thank you. We're very much looking forward to having you. So I want to give viewers and listeners an insight into your journey from the corporate world of KPMG, etc., into our little niche academy sector. So could you just maybe tell us kind of your journey, how you came to rack up in this funny little sector that we all work in?
Yes, so with pleasure. So I started in finance, in audit. I worked for a period of time as well in a sector body, which gave me a bit of exposure to lobbying and to policy development, which is very helpful today as well. But I turned to education with my children, really, when I started to see the impact that education can have on young people. And at that time, they were in a multilingual school, and that school was being phased out. And at the same time, Michael Gove came up with the concept of free school. And I could see how devastated the community was when you are in an international school. It's like your family. So when I saw that, we said, why don't we do something? And we started to, I really wanted to offer my skills to that project. So I think the academization movement was a perfect timing to do this, because the academies are more like, I know my education colleagues don't like when I say this, but are more like businesses, and they were growing. They had increased complexity. It's a very heavily regulated environment, and more experts were needed in finance and operations. So I also joined in, so this is what has led me to education, really. And then I joined the River Learning Trust in a context, 5 years ago, in a context where academies had gone through a rapid period of growth, in a context of taking on a lot of turnaround schools with educational challenges, but very often financial challenges as well. In the last decade, we also saw real-term cuts in funding. So a lot of MATs were in a period of we're experiencing financial strain due to probably too rapid growth as well as financial pressures, and therefore our skills in finance were really useful. But at the same time, I saw the role evolving quite significantly over that period, and finance in education, but I would say not just in education, but more generally in the commercial sector, has evolved during that period. So it started from a technical function in education, separate from the rest, with a focus on compliance, backward reporting, setting limits, safeguarding the assets, and it has moved on to a more strategic function at the center of the decisions, and really supporting school leaders to achieve their strategic objectives. I get involved in all sorts of things in deficit recovery meetings, where I really like to bring people around the table, education colleagues, HR colleagues, governors, very, very important. I value very much local governors. And I really give them the tools to be able to take those decisions. We are not here to dictate what they are doing, but to really use benchmarking as a conversation starter. And you also get involved in a lot of decisions around growth, risks, operating model. So it requires you to have a deep understanding on teaching and learning as well, to ensure the optimal allocation of resources. I also have the pleasure to cover data in my team as well, and this has proven to be a really great combination. We could see, not just in financial sector, but a change in the concept of value. And how you measure success, what success means, and we tend to look like at a much broader range of indicators, a broader range of data. So, for example, we've developed data around what we call the 5 pillars in trust. So, data once you start to look at data around education, around inclusion, around HR, finance, and to combine all those data together, you start to draw patterns. But it's not just quantitative data; it's also qualitative data from stakeholder survey, etc. So I think having data in the finance team has been really helpful to bring all those data together. Plus, also in finance, over the last few years, we had to learn how to deal with uncertainty in funding. Every year, we often have to approve our budget before knowing decisions on funding or on pay. So, therefore, you need to be able to reforecast very quickly, to anticipate as much as you can to avoid difficult decisions around the line. And technology and data analytics and system integration have really helped in that. So you are now able to drill down and to get the information much faster than before. So I would say with the traditional function of the CFO remain very important around compliance and reporting, CFOs today look probably at the future as much as the past, and have really their role has really evolved into more strategic financial management.
Quite a lot then in the last decade. So and how do you think the role has evolved? What challenges do we see today that we didn't see 10 years ago? Perhaps even in terms of the size of mats now. Now we've got supersized mats, etc., which we maybe didn't have 10 years ago.
Yeah. So do you see? Yeah. So do you mean how the mat sector has changed over that period? Or?
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, obviously, you've referred to the fact of a much more multidisciplinary requirements for a CFO. Has that run in a twin track almost at the same time as multi-academy trusts have got larger and larger? Is that demand greater?
Yeah, absolutely. Before we go on to that, well, I think what I value, what makes it specific to our sector as well, is also when I mentioned this change in the concept of value. Before it was all about shareholder value in companies, and now this concept of value is also prevalent in the commercial world. So it's a more value-driven culture. And what I like with this sector, we are talking more about civic institutions. So there is no competition. It's also very intellectually challenging, I think, because you get to understand more the macroeconomic dimension of the education policy, and you get to work with a lot more academics to try and work around the regulatory framework. But at the same time, there are things you can learn from the commercial sector in terms of expertise, operational efficiencies, more on the operational side, impossible word to pronounce in French. Organizational
structures.
Organizational. Oops. Dynamics of multi-level organizations. So you've got some concepts that we are bringing from the commercial sector around activity-based costing, end-to-end costing, this kind of thing. So I think these are things that are probably brought from my previous experience and are really helpful today. But I think the education sector brings a lot more to the role in terms of having a wider purpose. But in terms of coming back to your questions, how the sector has evolved over the last 14 years. So I think it's a good time to reflect because we had this acceleration of the academization movement in 2010. starting in 2010. And now we have a new government, so it's a good time to reflect on what's working well and to see what we need to build on and what we need to probably adjust. So yeah, at my level, I've seen maths going through three main phases. I think initially the focus was more around turning around underperforming schools. So maths were building central capacity with experts to support those underperforming schools, and they grew quickly all over the country with a more centralized top-down and directive approach to secure rapid improvement, which proved quite efficient. But at the same time, with all those funding pressures I was mentioning before, with real-term cuts, this has led to a push for efficiency and more consolidation and even more centralization. So although it was efficient and still efficient in some contexts, some felt less engaged at school level, less motivated due to probably too much standardization. And everyone knows that the self-determination is an important nutrient for human being, willing to have perhaps some degree of agency over their work. The Education Select Committee, in a report in 2017, they also criticized the remoteness of this approach of large centralized math in terms of the remoteness from their school communities. And some others argued also that it's important to have local content, to employ people locally, to use local suppliers, etc. So we've seen a second wave, and sometimes the same ones, adjusting, etc. As we had more academies willing to convert voluntarily, we see a second wave more centered, I would say, around collaboration, co-design, empowerment, and Dixon's academies, for example, they conceptualize this very well around what they call the aligned autonomy concept. It's called collaborative convergence as well. So it doesn't mean that you want everyone to do what they like, because otherwise it would be chaos. But it means that you try to have a backbone of core values, a direction, and while leaving some flexibility in the implementation. So this is to try and keeps people motivation and also to foster innovation. So initially I would say more turnaround, more top-down centralized, then gradually more co-design, and then now we are seeing probably another phase centered around civic institutions. So with the deterioration of public services, the cuts in local authorities, post-pandemic issues, we are seeing what Sam Friedman called a crisis of vulnerable children. With issues around mental health, special needs, social care, and poverty. Rowntree Foundation is saying 1 million of children living in poverty in the UK. This is quite a shocking statistic. So all this is having an impact on the children environment to learn. And this is leading to issues around attendance, around behavior. And schools are increasingly picking up the pieces of this broken system that they cannot resolve on their own. So they increasingly need to work with other local partners to solve those problems. So therefore, to come back to your question, I think that what has worked well in the math sector is really the collaboration and the professionalization of school improvement, operation, etc. I'd like to use an analogy that Leora Krodas is using, and for me that was the best thing I've heard about this. She's saying if you want an operation, you don't want your surgeon to work independently. You want your surgeon to work with to be part of a community of practice and to use the latest technology to treat you. So I think it's a very powerful message that she gave. And as Bridget Phillipson said recently, it doesn't really matter what name is on the door, what kind of structure you have. I think what's important is to really try and tackle together those issues. But I still believe the multi-academy trust provide a good structure to do this. But perhaps they have gone too fast, too quickly, and we probably in my view, need to bring more geographical coherence and more proximity to the community they serve. So personally, I would advocate for smaller maths, 10 to 30 school, which is probably enough to get to be able to have this minimum scale to buy the expertise you need. But being closer to your communities, working in partnership with the local authority is essential. But at the same time, I'm going to quote Leo Rakrudas again. So she personally, I see local authority with more of an oversight role. Leo often mentioned the conflict of interest that the local authorities have between planning, commissioning, assessing, providing those services. And also we need to be realistic about their capacity with all these budget cuts. So they have statutory responsibilities and they are accountable for things they do not always have the resources to tackle. So I think we really need to support them locally rather than having an adversarial relationship with them. And I'm also a big fan of the power of local governing bodies. If they are properly trained on the issues we are talking about, they can add a lot of value. I do believe in democratic local representation, but at the same time, we need to ensure that there is a required expertise around the table. So current challenges, I think, require a collective response, and I think we also need a more bottom-up approach, and we should not always expect the government to solve everything from the top, and I think we all have a responsibility in that. So anyway, this is my take on this, and let's see how things unfold with this new government.
Indeed, hopefully a little time of optimism. As you said, there's a time to pause now. Clearly, they are not, the current administration are not rushing into anything, are they? They definitely appear to be handpicking the right people for each department, for each role. And obviously, from my perspective, we're waiting for some announcement in terms of the level of investment. I mean, obviously, many of the things that you've talked about, bringing best practice from other sectors that you've worked with before, we do, unfortunately, as you know, and I'm sure you have had certain frustrations with, always come up against complying with the Academy's Trust Handbook in terms of some of those commercial best practices. So again, as you said, the timing is fortuitous, a new administration, and we've obviously just had the publication of the 2024 Academy Trust Network Handbook. What was your take on what was included in there? What were the pros and what were the cons?
Well, we haven't had many changes. We had a couple of changes on leasing where they allow financial leases without prior ESFA approval. I think they probably could have gone a little bit further in terms of having more financing options for all the sustainable, all the stuff around sustainable investment. You've got LED lighting in there, but there could have been more things around solar panels, etc. The other thing that has been heavily criticized is around the health and safety, where I think we all agree that trustees and school leaders have a responsibility, a duty to keep the estate safe. But we start to have a kind of problem when it's a bit like what I was saying earlier with local authority, when we hold people to account without giving them the resources to do so. So regulation has to be proportionate, and sanctioning people for not doing this when they don't have the resources to do that is probably not the right message to send, in my view. And lastly, you also had a few changes on internal scrutiny where they remove the peer review. But I think, the internal scrutiny piece probably would require an overall review. It was the right thing to do, to extend the kind of risk to non-financial risk and to look at the broader scope of risk on your risk register that can have an impact to achieving your strategic objective. But for a lot of these areas, non-financial area, you need subject experts, and this has been an issue to find the right people. As someone in a trust, I can tell you it's always a challenge. We probably need more guidance in terms of what, in how much detail things should be covered. There is an issue if you have subject expert, then it's difficult for someone to take the ownership of writing an annual report. So we probably need more guidance. There is so much variability in the kind of internal scrutiny reports in that field. Yeah.
What is your attitude towards allowing trusts more freedom to borrow?
No, I think it should be if there is, well, as long as you do it with the right safeguards, there is nothing wrong against that. When you've got the right plans in place for solar PV, it could be a great thing to do. So yeah, I think they should really open this more to.
Effectively, if we work on the premise that at the next spending review there will be many hungry mouths to be fed, from health, from transport, prisons, the list is endless. If we accept that there's only finite resources that government can allocate, and we also at the same time accept that we have at least a £15 billion condition backlog funding requirement, and honestly the estimates range from 30, 40, 50, 60 million pounds of investment that's going to be required to decarbonise our 22,000 school estate in the next 25 years. Let's be honest, government are not going to be able to fund that. We are going to need the market to assist. The market in a PFI light, perhaps, sort of way, one which rebalances the risks and the rewards from client and contractor. Do you feel there's any change of appetite towards that, towards allowing responsible bodies that can pass affordability criteria, bodies that are effectively run well, even allowing, for example, like an ISBL, Kite Mark, Moody's type of rating to allow those trusts to borrow to a certain amount, and also to only allow responsible lenders into the market to allow for those people to borrow from. Do you think there's any change of attitude around that? Do you think there's an awakening to that need?
Yeah, I think you're making a really good point, Tim. There's no way the government will be able to fund this. When you look at capital, I think it was the most cut in the last 14 years, 46% cut in real terms, and we've got, I heard from the National Audit Office, 38% of school buildings beyond their estimated life. So we need to do something. But with the right safeguard, because I think we need to make sure we don't enter into a new type of PFI agreement, and those agreements can be quite complex. So we need to make sure they are understood by operational teams in schools. So yeah, at the same time, I do think we need to do more in that space, but at the same time, we need to be very careful to have something that is understood by schools and multi-academy trust.
Okay. I mean, obviously, there's always questions in terms of levels of investment, but I know that you've also have a passion and have been exploring ways of getting more for your money in terms of with regards to SEN, etc. The amount of money that's being spent there, could it be invested in a different way?
Yeah, I've got a keen interest on special needs from day one when I started 5 years ago. That was probably the number one preoccupation of head teachers. So you've had a surge in demand, and more funding has gone into it, about 60% more funding, but we can see the system is still broken, so we probably need to change completely the way we are looking at this and disconnect early intervention. I think the government is really supporting this. Everybody is supporting this early intervention by bringing more money into schools to be able to tackle those needs. Probably more work upstream to really have more consistency around the type of needs, who should benefit from spaces in special schools, etc. But then equip the schools. What is very important is to do things in the right order and really fund the school to equip the teachers to be inclusive by design and stop labeling the children. The fastest growing needs are probably social, emotional, and mental health and autism. And we really need to be inclusive and to train the teachers to be able to support those kinds of needs in the classroom. And if you support the needs more locally in their own environment, that will also reduce the transport support costs. But this is an immensely complex issue because you have to work with all other actors, civic actors, health, social care, etc. And it has implication in terms of accountability measures, and you need to review all this, I would say. So I think the challenge for the government is really there are a lot of things like special needs, for example, or capital. They probably require a significant overhaul, a longer term strategy, and the challenge for them is really to try and some of them require very urgent fixes, but at the same time you don't want to rush it and you have financial constraints. So I think we really need to work in partnership with them, and this is what I really like, whilst we need to be politically neutral. I'm really impressed so far by Bridget Phillipson and the message she's sending. So not just because she gave us more money for teachers over the summer, which is really welcome and has really brought the budget back to back afloat, but also because her communication, her empathy, you can feel it in her communication. She feels she really cares, and she's keen to work in partnership with the sector, and that's already a step in the right direction. I think she's understood that a lot of the current issues are rooted in a wider crisis around mental health, poverty, etc. And if you don't tackle this, then you can have the best teachers in the classroom, but the priority is really to make sure they are in a mental state to learn, really. So I think she's really keen to reallocate a lot of the resources from crisis management to more early intervention, and moving the SEN under the school minister is really a move in the right direction. The childcare program is also another great thing that they are doing to try and encourage more people to go back to work and really support the economy. So, and I feel at the moment she's doing what she says. I agree with you on capital is a little bit light so far, what we've heard. On special needs, I think they want to observe, but they won't be able to observe for long because we've got local authority in the brink of collapse, and also more and more children with special needs in schools without the right support. So there is really an urgency to tackle those issues, and she will have to make some compromises. So there will need to be some trade-off, which are always difficult.
Of course. As we're getting towards the end of this recording, I must ask you about whether you have achieved something, whether you're midway through it, or whether you have your eye on a particular aim, in terms of what is Benedicte's legacy going to be?
Well, what a question at 54. So I hope I would have helped to modernize a little bit the role of the CFO in Academy Trust, but not just me, with all my colleagues, my great colleagues in other multi-academy trusts, and all the school business professionals, really. And I'm really excited to work with ISBL on standards and professional development in that space, and to get that those school business professionals better recognized. So as I said, I have deep interest on special needs, and I think what I've started is to bring together various sector bodies with some experts. We've got some brilliant people, and we just need to try and align our views to support the government to try and tackle and move the right building blocks in a specific order, so it's not necessarily we need more funding, more special school places, etc. But it's also the accountability, governance, structure of the system that needs to be reviewed. So if I can help a little bit by bringing people together to talk about those issues, I would feel happy. And at the moment I need to constantly have projects to feed me. So at the moment I'm really into this trust as civic institutions, and really trying to build relationship with our community locally, to try and build links with cultural organization, with employers, etc., to offer more enrichment activities to our children. In a teacher tab survey, they were saying they would value more life skills, the curriculum is a little bit impact. So often enrichment activities outside school is often a way to offer all these nice things to have, but that not everyone can afford. So I'm really trying to use this to enhance their experience and to meet what they need. And it's not just the legacy of one person. I think we have amazing people in this sector, and this is this sense of fulfillment when you start to tackle to solve wider problems that are bigger than yourself, and this deep sense of fulfillment that you get when you start to see the impact of this is having collectively on people, on young people especially. So I've been reading a lot about someone who has really inspired me over the summer. It's called Frederic Laloux, looking at different stages of how organizations have evolved, and he's talking about the evolutionary purpose. And I think we constantly need to be alert of what's coming and to adapt. And I would say it's very important to listen to where life is taking you and to seize every moment as you go along.
Well, given your passion, skill set, drive, I'm sure you will achieve all of these things and more. Thank you very much for being our guest today.
My pleasure, Tim. Thank you very much.